A wealthy CEO collapses on a busy city sidewalk, only to discover that the homeless woman who comes to his aid is his wife, long presumed dead. As the truth behind her disappearance unravels, it threatens to shatter everything he thought he knew and destroy his family forever. "Daddy, look at Mommy." The black beggar was just like her. And the millionaire fainted. "Daddy, that lady over there looks just like Mommy," shouted the 8-year-old boy, pulling hard on his father's suit sleeve. Michael Harrison, CEO of one of Chicago's largest technology companies, was leaving a 5-star restaurant when his world fell apart. The woman sitting on the sidewalk in torn clothes and holding a card asking for help had the exact same face as Sarah, his wife who died of cancer 3 years ago. She wasn't similar, she was identical. Michael felt his legs buckle. His heart raced as if it would explode in his chest. How on earth could a beggar have the exact same face as the woman he loved more than anything in this world? "Impossible," he whispered, grabbing his son Tommy's hand. His eyes couldn't look away from the woman who was slowly rummaging through a plastic bag, completely oblivious to the shock she was causing just a few feet away. Kesha Williams, 34, never imagined that one day someone would look at her with such amazement. At 15, she ran away from her last abusive foster home. Since then, the streets of Chicago had been her only family. 20 years of surviving as invisible, being pushed around, ignored, treated like human trash by people who didn't even see her as a person. But at that moment, something was different. A white man in an expensive suit stared at her as if he had seen a ghost. Next to him, a little blonde boy pointed at her with wide eyes. "Sir, are you okay?" asked the restaurant security guard, noticing Michael standing like a statue in the middle of the busy sidewalk. Michael shook his head, trying to snap back to reality. It was impossible. Sarah had always said she was an only child. Her parents had confirmed it at the funeral. She had no sisters, let alone a twin sister living on the streets. But those brown eyes, the curve of her smile when she thanked someone for a coin they tossed her, even the way she tilted her head, it was Sarah. Every feature, every expression. "Daddy, why are you crying?" Tommy tugged at his father's sleeve again. Michael didn't even notice the tears streaming down his face. 20 years building a business empire, taking on the biggest sharks on Wall Street, and a simple coincidence on the street had brought him down like a house of cards. Kesha noticed the movement and looked up. For a split second, the two stared at each other. She saw something in his eyes that she had never seen on any face before, recognition, as if he knew her from some impossible place. "Excuse me," Michael approached slowly, his voice breaking. "May I ask your name?" Kesha instinctively shrank back. Rich men who approached her on the streets never meant well. "Kesha," she replied softly, ready to run if necessary. "Kesha Williams." Her eyes widened. How the hell did he know her last name? No one had called her by her full name in decades. On the streets, she was just Kay, the invisible woman who slept in alleys and ate leftovers. Michael took his cell phone out of his pocket with trembling hands, found a photo of Sarah, and showed it to her. "Do you know this woman?" Kesha stared at the screen and almost fainted. It was like looking at herself in expensive clothes and with her hair done. Every detail of her face was identical to what she saw in the mirror when she could find one. Who is she?" Kesha asked, her voice coming out as a haunted whisper. "She was my wife. She died 3 years ago." Michael bent down until he was at her level. "And you look exactly like her." At that moment, as hundreds of people hurried past on the sidewalk, oblivious to the extraordinary scene unfolding before them, 2 lives were about to connect in a way neither could have imagined. But what Michael didn't know yet was that some truths are capable of destroying entire families. If your heart is racing with this impossible story, subscribe to the channel because what comes next will show how a simple encounter can reveal secrets that have been buried for decades. 3 days after the impossible encounter, Michael couldn't think of anything else. He had hired James Mitchell, the best private detective in Chicago, but the first pieces of information came as a punch in the stomach. Kesha Williams, 34 years old. No official birth certificate. She was in 12 different foster homes until she was 15. History of abuse, constant runaways. On the streets ever since. James paused, watching Michael's expression. Mike, this woman has no registered family. There is no legal connection to your wife. Michael slammed his fist on the office desk. That's impossible, James. You saw the photos I sent you. They are identical. This isn't a coincidence. Listen, I've seen twins separated at birth before. There's usually an adoption record, documents, some kind of clue. There's nothing here. It's as if someone deliberately erased every trace of her existence. Meanwhile, across town, Margaret Blackwood, Sarah's mother, received a disturbing call from her sister Helen. Maggie, you need to know, I saw Michael yesterday talking to that woman on the street downtown. The one who looks like, you know who. Helen whispered into the phone. What if he finds out what we did 34 years ago? Margaret closed her eyes. At 71, she thought the secret was buried forever. Helen, we promised never to talk about it again. Sarah never knew, and Michael must never find out. But what if she remembers? What if someone finds the documents we couldn't destroy? Margaret felt a chill run down her spine. What documents? You said you burned everything. I kept a copy of the original certificate. I was afraid I might need it later. It's been in my safe for 34 years. Are you crazy? Go get it now and destroy it immediately. While the two women were plotting, Michael had taken a step they hadn't expected. He took Kesha to get a DNA test, offering her $1,000 just to agree to find out if she had any living relatives. Why are you doing this? Kesha asked at the lab, still suspicious but touched by Michael's genuine kindness. No one ever cared where I came from. Because everyone deserves to know who they are, Michael replied, holding his son's hand. And because something tells me that your story is connected to ours. Tommy, with the brutal honesty of children, said, if you're family to Mom, that means you're family to us too, right? Kesha's eyes filled with tears. For 20 years, no one had included her anywhere. But Margaret Blackwood wasn't going to stand for it. The next day, she called Dr. Harrison, the head of Michael's company's board of directors. Richard, I need to talk to you about your partner. Michael is behaving in a way that is troubling. He's getting involved with the wrong people and exposing our grandson to dangerous situations. As someone responsible for billions in investments, I think you should know. Dr. Harrison, a conservative and calculating man, didn't like what he heard. Margaret, do you think Michael is compromising his judgment? Could this affect the company? I'm just concerned about my grandson's well-being and the reputation Sarah has built for our family. This woman may be manipulating him, taking advantage of his resemblance to Sarah. What Margaret didn't know was that Michael had installed recording devices in his office after receiving threats from competitors. Her entire conversation with Dr. Harrison was being automatically recorded. James called the next day with a disturbing discovery. Mike, I got access to the old social services files. 34 years ago, 2 black twin girls were separated at birth. One was put up for adoption, no public record of who adopted her. The other went into foster care. And Sarah was registered where at that time. Here's where it gets interesting. Sarah Blackwood is listed as informally adopted by the Blackwood family. No legal proceedings, no official documentation. Mike, I think your wife's family bought one of the twins and abandoned the other. Michael felt his world collapse. You're saying that Margaret and Helen, they chose one child and left her sister to die in the system? And they managed to keep it a secret for 34 years? That night, Michael received the results that would change everything. Mike, you need to sit down. The DNA test, Kesha Williams is a 99.7% match to Sarah's genetic samples. They are twin sisters. The silence on the phone lasted an eternity. Michael looked at the wedding photo on the nightstand. Sarah was smiling radiantly next to her mother and Aunt Helen. The 3 women had kept a secret that destroyed one life and almost cost another. James, I need you to find everything. Every document, every payment, every trace of this transaction. And I want you to install discrete cameras in Margaret's house. If she still has hidden evidence, we're going to find it. Mike, that could be considered invasion of privacy. They separated twin sisters, James. They condemned one innocent child to 20 years on the streets while raising the other in luxury. That's not invasion of privacy, that's justice. As Kesha slept in her first clean bed in decades, she had no idea that her life was about to change. But she also didn't know that some people would do anything to keep her secrets buried, including trying to permanently remove her from Michael's life. What Margaret never imagined was that her every move to keep Kesha away was being documented, recorded, and archived. The web of lies she had woven for 34 years was about to unravel in spectacular fashion. A week later, Michael arranged dinner at Margaret's house. She thought she had finally gotten him away from Kesha through Dr. Harrison, who was already pressuring Michael to distance himself from the embarrassing situation to protect the company. "Honey, I'm so glad you've come to your senses," Margaret smiled falsely, pouring wine in the elegant living room where photos of Sarah decorated every table. "That woman was clearly disturbed, trying to take advantage of your pain." "You're right, Margaret. I need to protect my family." Michael paused dramatically, watching her shoulders relax with relief. "That's why I brought some things to show you." He placed a tablet on the coffee table and pressed play. Margaret's voice echoed through the room with crystal clarity. "What if he finds out about what we did 34 years ago?" The wine glass slipped from Margaret's hand, shattering on the marble floor. Helen, who was visiting, turned white as a sheet. "How did you?" Margaret whispered, her hands shaking uncontrollably. "Get this? Recorders in my office picked up not just one but 4 conversations of you plotting against Kesha." Michael slid his finger across the screen methodically. "But wait, there's more." He played another recording, Helen's voice saying, "I kept a copy of the original certificate. It's been in my safe for 34 years. Helen stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair. "Margaret, you said he'd never find out." "James didn't just find the payment records, Margaret. He found all the documents you hid." Michael opened a folder, scattering papers across the table. $15,000 up front to the orphanage director. Another $5,000 to forge documents. 3 renewals of the silence agreement. And here, he pulled out a yellowed piece of paper, the original birth certificate showing twin girls, Sarah and Kesha Williams. Margaret tried to grab the documents, but Michael was faster. "No, no, no. Now it's time for you to hear the truth you've been hiding for 34 years. Michael, you don't understand the pressure we were under," Helen tried to justify. "I understand perfectly. 2 white middle-class women decided to play God with the lives of 2 black children. You chose which one deserved privilege and which one deserved to die on the streets." At that moment, the doorbell rang. Michael opened the door, and Kesha entered, followed by James, 3 local TV reporters, and 2 civil rights lawyers. "Surprise, Margaret. Kesha deserves to hear the truth from your own mouth. And so does the world." The cameras were already rolling, broadcasting live to thousands of viewers. Margaret stood reeling, realizing the magnitude of what was happening. "You can't do this to us. We raised Sarah with love. We gave her a good life." "Love?" Kesha spoke for the first time, her voice cutting through the air like a sharp blade. "You call it love to buy a child like an object? To condemn her sister to live like an animal for 20 years? The lead reporter approached with her microphone. "Mrs. Blackwood, our viewers would like to know, how do you justify separating twin sisters and condemning one of them to a life of misery?" Margaret looked desperately at the cameras, realizing that her decades-long reputation was being destroyed live on television. We were going to get her back when our situation improved." "Lies." James interrupted, pulling out more documents. "You renewed the non-disclosure agreement 3 times, in 1995, 2001, and 2007. You paid a total of $45,000 over the years to ensure that Kesha was never found, even when she ran away at age 15 and was living on the streets. Helen collapsed on the sofa, crying hysterically. "Margaret, I told you to stop. I told you it was too cruel, but you were afraid she would show up and ruin our life." "Shut up, Helen!" Margaret screamed, completely losing the composure she had maintained for 71 years. Michael turned to the cameras. "I want everyone to see who Margaret Blackwood really is, a woman who bought one child, abandoned another, and paid for decades to keep this crime a secret." Kesha approached Margaret, her dignity unshaken even after so much humiliation. "While Sarah grew up in mansions, attended private schools, and had everything she wanted, I slept in alleys, scavenged for food in the trash, and was beaten for existing. And you knew. You always knew." Margaret tried one last desperate ploy. "Kesha, we can talk in private. I can compensate you financially." "Compensate?" Kesha laughed bitterly. "You think money can erase 20 years of hunger, of cold, of being treated like human trash? I don't want your dirty money. I want the world to know who you really are." At that moment, Michael's phone rang. It was Dr. Harrison. Michael answered on speakerphone so everyone could hear. "Michael, I just watched the live broadcast. The company wants to officially state that Margaret Blackwood is permanently banned from any involvement in the Harrison family business. Her attempts at manipulation have been uncovered and documented. You have our full support." Margaret's face turned gray. In a matter of minutes, she had lost her reputation, her influence over Michael, her access to her grandson, and now even any financial connection to the empire Sarah had helped build. The cameras captured every second of her total collapse. The live comments were already in the hundreds, with people expressing outrage at the cruelty committed against Kesha. "You've destroyed me," Margaret whispered, looking around the room that no longer felt like hers. "No," Kesha replied with devastating calm. "You destroyed yourselves. I just survived." As Margaret and Helen were escorted out of their own homes by lawyers who were already preparing criminal charges for child trafficking and document forgery, one question remained: how would Tommy react when he found out he had an aunt who had been deliberately hidden from him? And would it be possible for Michael and Kesha to build a real family on the wreckage of so many decades of lies and cruelty? 6 months after the live broadcast that destroyed Margaret Blackwood, Kesha Williams was unrecognizable, not just physically, although medical care, proper nutrition, and a safe place to sleep had completely transformed her appearance, but mainly in her posture and confidence. "Aunt Kesha, are you coming to my school presentation?" Tommy asked as they ate breakfast in the house Michael had bought for the three of them to live together. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," she replied, adjusting the boy's tie. "Your mother Sarah would be proud to see how brave and kind you've grown." The Sarah and Kesha Williams Foundation had become one of the largest homeless assistance organizations in Chicago. In just 6 months, it had taken 847 people off the streets, reunited 23 families separated by the system, and created the first national program to track down lost siblings. Kesha was not only the executive director but also the leading advocate for the rights of society's invisible people. "Ms. Williams," said the assistant entering the elegant office overlooking the city, "CNN has confirmed the interview for tomorrow. They want to talk about the bill being voted on in Congress. And more donations have come in, $2.3 million this week alone." The Kesha's Law bill, which required adoption agencies to keep permanent, accessible records of separated siblings, had gained the support of 43 senators after her story went viral internationally. 3 multinational companies had offered Kesha consulting contracts to develop social responsibility programs. Forbes included her in its 40 Under 40 list as the most influential activist of the year. Universities from Harvard to Oxford invited her to speak on resilience and social transformation. Meanwhile, Margaret Blackwood faced her third criminal hearing at the Illinois State Penitentiary. The scandal had completely destroyed her life. Friends of decades had turned away. Her church had expelled her. Her house had been auctioned off to pay fines. And even Helen had moved to another state, changed her name, and denied any relationship. "Margaret Blackwood," said the judge, "in addition to the 5 years in prison already sentenced, you have been found guilty of new crimes uncovered during the investigation: tax evasion, money laundering, and racketeering. The new sentence is 15 additional years without the possibility of parole. The journalists crowding the courtroom recorded every second of her final downfall. Margaret, now gray-haired and haggard, bore little resemblance to the powerful woman who had controlled destinies for decades. In the front row, Michael and Kesha watched in silence. There was no joy in revenge, only the quiet satisfaction of seeing justice served after 34 years. "She looks so small now," Kesha whispered to Michael. "Evil always seems smaller when it loses its power to cause harm," he replied. That night, the three of them had dinner together, as they did religiously. Tommy excitedly recounted his history class, where he had presented his project, Families Lost and Found, inspired by his own family's story. Kesha patiently helped with math homework, using methods she had learned in night classes she was taking to complete her education. Michael watched the scene, still amazed at how the greatest tragedy of their lives had turned into the greatest miracle. "Dad," Tommy said suddenly, stopping mid-bite, "can I call Aunt Kesha my second mom?" Kesha felt her eyes fill with tears. After 34 years of believing she was unwanted and disposable, she finally had a family that chose her back. "Of course you can, sweetheart," she replied, hugging the boy who had become the son she never thought she would have. A year later, Kesha received Chicago's Heroine of the Year award at a nationally televised ceremony. In her speech, which would go viral with over 50 million views, she said, "Margaret Blackwood thought she could decide which child deserved love and which deserved abandonment. She believed that her wealth and privilege gave her the right to play God with human lives. But what she didn't understand is that true love cannot be bought, controlled, or destroyed by prejudice. Today, I have a family that loves me, not because they have to, but because they choose to. Love me for the person I have become, not for the person she tried to keep me from being." The audience rose to a standing ovation that lasted 4 minutes. Margaret watched from prison on a small television in the cafeteria, finally realizing the magnitude not only of what she had lost but of the human potential she had tried to waste. Tommy grew up knowing that family is built with daily choices of love, not just blood. Michael learned that sometimes we lose something precious to find something even more valuable. And Kesha discovered that being invisible for 20 years prepared her to use her voice even more powerfully when she was finally heard. "The best revenge against those who try to erase us," Kesha said in her last interview, "is to shine so brightly that the whole world sees us." Margaret tried to condemn me to invisibility, but she ended up giving me the platform to help thousands of other invisible people be seen. She tried to break my soul, but she only showed me what she was truly made of. Today, 5 years later, Kesha's story is studied in law schools as an example of how the system can fail, but also how the truth always finds a way to the light. Her foundation has transformed more than 15,000 lives. The bill named after her has been passed in 47 states. Margaret learned too late that trying to control the fate of innocent children is not only cruel, it's a guaranteed way to destroy your own soul. Meanwhile, Kesha has turned her pain into purpose, her rejection into global acceptance, and her invisibility into a light that illuminates the path for thousands. If this story of family, justice, and overcoming adversity has touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that our greatest strength comes not from where we are born but from how we choose to transform our most painful experiences into fuel to illuminate the world, and rewrite not only our own history but the history of all those who still live in the shadows, waiting for their chance to shine.